So people have started joining us on the land of YouTube. There's a couple of people there.
Cool.
We'll open up. We'll start letting people join
Mm-hmm.
in the waiting room.
Nice.
So,
Just going to reset my left camera.
hey guys, how's everyone doing? Good to see some names I recognize. Mark. Good to see you. I don't think I've seen you, Mark, since last December. Mark Levy. How's it going? Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to give people a couple of minutes to join in. So we'll let Sam do some warming up, some noodling, just to get our ears in the mood for some pentatonic stuff. I'll hand over to you, Sam. All right. Got a nice comment over on YouTube. Sam with the guitar fireworks this November 5th. So for those of you in the UK will know, tonight is Guy Fawkes night, fireworks night. You might hear some explosions in the background. Do not panic. It's our annual day of celebrating assassination attempt. so yeah. Right. Guys, first of all, it's fantastic to see so many names and faces that I recognize. And to everyone who's new, welcome to this live stream. My name is Luke. I run a company called Guitar Vivo. We publish books, we do events, we do all kinds of things. And I basically emotionally blackmail all of my friends who are phenomenal guitarists into writing books for me and putting on these lessons so that we can all make the most of these opportunities and get some private time with them and ask them questions. You know, that kind of thing that wasn't available 30 years ago. We can get behind the scenes and see how these guys think. A lot of you guys will be familiar with Sam. He's done a lot for Lick Library. He is one of the most hard-working guys in the industry. If you don't know him, he does a lot of those how to play this album lessons for Lick Library. So they'll give him a whole Van Halen record or a whole Def Leppard or Pantera. And any other ones I'm missing that are worthy of shouting?
The David Lee Roth, Eat 'em and Smile, Extreme, Porno Graffiti. That was a recent one.
Cool. So this guy does all of that stuff, and what that means for us is there's a lot of knowledge there that we can kind of ask about. There's a lot of listening and working out that he's done that he's going to share with us today. So a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Do just send questions the moment they come to you. Don't feel like you got to wait till the end. We will make sure we have time at the end for questions, but if you have questions, just get them in now, and I will bank them. I'll keep track of them and ask them if it's appropriate, or I'll save them. So don't risk forgetting them. That cliche. There's no stupid questions, guys. I want everyone to make the most of this. Doesn't matter where we're all at different levels, and we all have different gaps in our knowledge. Some of the most advanced players in the room might not know something fairly simple just because they glossed over it, and vice versa. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Yeah, I think that's the main rules of housekeeping. Be nice in the chat. We have had some incidents. Be nice and courteous in the chat. We got someone tried to heckle Scott Henderson at his one, which is they didn't like his use of the tremolo arm, but so they were trying to ask him to stop. Okay, so
Mad.
I've talked enough. Let's get on to the meat of what we're going to do today. Today we're talking about creative pentatonic scales, and this is really maybe three different things. The first is applications. Sam's going to teach us about some different ways of using the pentatonic scales we already know. So this is getting more mileage out of things we do in like a melodic sense. The second is different ways of technically playing the pentatonic scales that we already know, mapping it out. We'll explore some buzzwords that you might have heard: 3-1-3, 3-1-2, 2-1-2, all that kind of stuff. And then the third thing is we'll maybe get into, if we have time, or you guys can tell me if you want this as a priority, we can talk about some other pentatonic structures, so some exotic pentatonic things, some more Eastern pentatonic scales. So I think a good place to start would just be to do a stock take. If you guys can just write in the comment if there's anything you want to get out of this session, any question you have in particular, anything you've seen Sam do that you want to do, anything that you've seen someone else do that you want to do, because Sam might know the answer for that as well. Let's just give you guys 20 seconds to just make sure that, you know, we're on the same page with what you guys want. And then, yeah, okay, right, I need a drink of water. Sam, I'll hand over to you. Can you give us a brief introduction to what we're going to do today, and maybe we'll dive in there.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It's an absolute pleasure. I get asked to do lots of sort of tutorial things. However, I see myself as a student, and I'm on a journey, as we all are. And some of the stuff I want to share is just stuff that I've found interesting. We all have different views of the same mountaintop, and we can all see different things on that journey. So maybe some of the stuff might be useful, maybe it isn't, maybe it's reaffirming in some ways. But I hope that at least there's at least one or two things that you can glean from tonight's talk. So pentatonics, the joke is that you learn them when you first start playing, and then you go off and learn your modes. You learn all about your, you know, all the kind of crazy arpeggios, and you learn your melodic minor stuff if you get into your jazz. And then you come back to your pentatonics, because they become so useful. They're so recognizable as a sound. And there's a great Bobby McFerrin video, the guy that wrote Don't Worry, Be Happy, getting a whole audience to kind of guess the pentatonic scale. He doesn't call it a pentatonic. He gets them he jumps to different parts of the stage and gives them a tonic note, and everybody kind of just follows, and it's pentatonic. So there's something, without being woo-woo about it, there's definitely something very human about the interval set of a minor pentatonic. So it's worthwhile spending time getting more out of it. And of course, when guitar is taught, guitar is a very guitar-centric scale because it fits very nicely on the neck. But also there's lots of music born of the patterns that the pentatonic scale presents us with. And a lot of that is blues influenced, and I think that's awesome and very important. However, there's also ways of breaking it up just to make it, because before blues there was just the voice singing pentatonics, and the way different cultures have articulated those 5 notes shows it's not all just, you know, stock blues licks. We can get lots of wonderful sounds out of the pentatonic scale. So I kind of want to talk, like Luke said, looking at some ways of reimagining some of the patterns, because I do believe, as much as I'd like to say that it's all about ear, and I'm quite dogmatic about learning by ear, everything I do for Lick Library, I could get the tab books, I could go online and learn the albums, but learning it by ear it puts it into your DNA. So learning by ear. But one thing that does come up is the actual geometry of how patterns lay out on a fretboard and what they lead you to. And some people, people say you need to transcend patterns, but then sometimes the pattern actually also helps you breed some creativity and some new potentials as well. So both are true. So hopefully tonight I can show some systems that have helped me. I call myself the dyslexic guitarist. I'm a rock guitar player, really. I'm not a sort of fusion maestro. My technique is ropey at best, but these things have helped me out, and I do believe they've helped. They give me something to express myself in, and I hope that maybe they can help you find your own unique expression. And then I want to talk about the techniques, because I come from a metal rock background, and there are some ways of playing a pentatonic scale which lead nicely into certain techniques such as tapping and legato and all that jazz rock. And then Luke did mention something about exotic scales. Now, I can't remember all the exotic scales I know, but I do know there's some shortcuts and things that I do, and maybe we can just workshop that and just see which ones come up. And maybe people can throw different formulations at me and watch me fail at playing them. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Do you want to play over that track, and then maybe I can ask you some questions on what you play, because people didn't see this. You jammed over a track before we started.
Oh, well.
You did.
Okay, well, there's two things here. There's a little performance piece that I've come up with, and maybe I'll just play the piece first. Play the video of the piece. It's a pre-playback, and then I'll do some jamming over one of the sections, because I don't think I've got the backing track version right here at the moment, so it might be more beneficial just to hear the track and hear how some of these things come together. Is that cool?
Yeah, so basically this track is a combination of different pentatonic concepts applied musically and creatively. Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah, let's go for it. Hopefully everyone can see that, and here we go. Voila. So there we go. That is the little tune.
So I know that's all pentatonic stuff, but some of those shapes were, well, maybe you guys will agree, some of those shapes were different to how we're used to laying them out. And there were definitely some outside sounds, some things popping out there. So I thought maybe we could start with some of those shapes and how you're laying out the pentatonic scale to get those really wide sounding lines. Most of like when I play pentatonics with a blues background, my range is, an octave, maybe an octave and a half. But some of that stuff you're doing seems to go from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, I think, well, let's bring in on hopefully that guitar neck is fairly clear, Luke. You can just let me know if that's visible. Yeah. So the first part of that track, I can't, by the way, don't expect me to play it perfectly, but the vibe was E minor. I've got a very Brian May tone going on, but there we are. So all E minor. But then, with the pentatonic, if we're looking at box 1, it can be very easy to. I think this is the rut that we can all find in scales, is that we end up going up and down because the pattern or maybe we play how we practice. So it's very easy to play. I call that linear in terms of notes. It's going up and down the notes. And then maybe in rock and roll you might get that might be the nearest thing to a kind of a jump of any intervals larger than what's next to the adjacent note. So one of the first things that I've found very useful is the system of 2-1-2, and this would often get kind of put in with arpeggios and things, but I did, just as a disclaimer, I did do some stretchy things, that sort of thing, and lots of people often complain when I do that because they say their fingers are too small. We'll come back to that point in a moment because I've got a cure-all, but also you don't have to do that in order to get wide intervals. So what we can do here is we can actually take, in fact this happens in that riff, what was it? I think within that riff that I played at the start there, I was taking 2 notes of the pentatonic in a box position and then jumping to 1 note out of the next string on that position. So if we were going to box 1 pentatonic E minor, which I hope that most of us are fairly familiar with, normally you'd have 12-15 on the E, 12-14 on the A. But here I'm just going to skip the 12th fret on the A string, just go straight to 14. This is going to look a lot like a minor 7th arpeggio, and some of them will be because that's the pentatonic. Then we can have 2 notes on the next string. And then I can continue that same system. I chose to take a note on the right hand side of the box 1 position there. So I take another note on the right hand side there, so 14 on the G. Now this does lead to some technical queries about rolling bars and what finger to use. You can, my lazy way of teaching is, well, find what works for you, because ultimately that's going to, settle with you most likely. But you could use 1 finger to go over those 2 strings, or we could try and finger everything separately there. So that's a 12 to 14 on the D and a 14 on the G there. But however you want to do that, and then continuing, we to continue that through the whole position, 12-15 on the B and 15 on the top E. So that's what I would call a 2-1 system. So I would call this here's some lingo, a contracted 2-1 position, because it's in a smaller box than we can stretch out to, which we'll talk about later. But now, of course, I'm talking about where I love blues. I think the blues, Scott Henderson often would talk about, you need to have the blues somewhere, definitely. But this is a nice way of kind of, creating some contrast within a solo. Maybe you have a little moment like that. When I teach, I don't necessarily play musically. It's more just kind of, here's a blues lick. There's a good example. You take your classic Chuck Berry and then so I'm kind of just riffing here, literally, on this idea, but that's 2-1-2s. And if you know your 5 positions of the minor pentatonic, you can play run out of frets. But you can kind of play those off any set of strings. I like to think of things. One thing, actually, coming back to the pentatonic scale in a more kind of traditional way, we often learn them in big vertical patterns going up the neck, like box 1, box 2, box 5, and that's all well and good. But I think it's probably healthier just to think of it in 1 octaves. Find that 1 octave shape in different positions. That same permutation, fingering almost, but in different positions of 1 octave. And then when you work on any technique of like a 2-1-2, it's easier to think about it in terms of moving it around. It's not like you have to sort of practice it in each position. And it's more likely in an improvisational context that you're going to find something like that rather than referring to a big old scale pattern, especially with pentatonics, because often the shape leads us into kind of habits of playing, and if we're looking at breaking out of those habits, then we need to have new ways of seeing. So that's hence why. So yeah, 2-1-2. It doesn't have to be. I mean, I'm doing 2-1-2 here with the 1. So that's 2 notes, and the 1 being on the right-hand side of our 2-note per string pattern. But you could, if you wanted to be crazy, I encourage you to be crazy, you could go to the 12th fret on the A. So now you end up with a nice fourths movement going on. And so theoretically, obviously, pentatonic is minor third and seconds, basically major seconds stacked on top of each other in different permutations. But here we're gonna, you're getting that fourths movement, which is pretty cool. I'm a big fan of Frank Gambale, but I've never been able to really do any of the things that he does. That's my impression of him. But obviously, that's probably quite an insulting impression of him. I do love him; he's incredible. But so I always like that fourth sound he got. But this is my way of kind of getting to that. And a lot of what I'm going to share here is, especially from learning all these albums for Lick Library, it's been a result of what I can't do properly that I've discovered. Like, I'm not going to try and do that. But I'm going to do something else with that, which I feel more natural with. And I do. You got those two sides of playing. You got to push yourself in new ways of thinking, but also you got to find those things that gel with your joy of playing and playing guitar, and really work on them. Find permutations of those things. So this is one of the things I did because I like that sound. I'm going to pause there, Luke, because I realise I do talk a lot.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I loved that. Just especially the point you made at the end. It just reminded me of the last live stream I did with Martin Miller, and he was saying everyone seems to be incredibly obsessed with working on their weaknesses, but no one cares how amazing your worst skill is. Like they care about what you can do well. And people seem to spend all their time trying to work on their weaknesses so that nothing ever becomes a strength, almost, or the strengths don't get to thrive. And I mean, you're like me. We have very similar taste in guitarists. A lot of those guys have, gone down a path not because of anything other than the fact that that's what was their strength and that's what was natural, and that's led to their style.
Yeah.
So, could I put you on the spot and say, when you have like a little play over that backing track and show us some of that 2-1-2 coming out in your playing?
Yeah. So, a little disclaimer here. Obviously, I wasn't prepared to do this, Luke, but I'm playing over the video, so it's like it's not a backing track, so it's going to clash with other things. But it's more of a demonstration of maybe, I don't know, throwing in over that main riff, basically. Although there is a weird chord change, but we'll talk about that later on. Here we go. So I don't know if there's anything there that I managed to do. I couldn't really hear what I was doing.
Okay.
But
you did, but I think that we have to open our universe a little bit. So we did the contracted 2-1-2.
Yes.
Did you do some of the what do you call them? Expanded 2-1-2?
Expanded 2-1-2s, yeah. And ultimately, one of my favourite guitar players is a guitarist called Jason Becker. I'm sure, hopefully, a few of us are aware of him. And he did this awesome lick in a song called "It's Showtime" by David Lee Roth. Now, I'm not about to play it 100%, but he did this sort of idea. That kind of thing, except he did it in perfect sextuplet notes, and it was just, really fiery and way better than that. But what he was doing was basically this mixture of contracted and expanded. So I'm going to live above the 12th fret because I do believe any of these expanded ideas probably work best in a place where we can play them and stretch to. So let's just take, I want us to live in E minor pentatonic again, because I think it's just as a vehicle to get us there. And if we were to do a 2-1-2 from the G string, that'd be 12, 14 on the G string, 15 on the B, and then 12, 15 on the top E. That is a 2-1-2 contracted. But then if we expand one of the strings, we could expand. So on the high E string, if we're looking at a pentatonic scale, we've got available within that hand position 12, 15, and 17 potentially. Now the beauty here is you don't have to use all 3 fingers. We can just go 12 and 17 here. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense there. So if I was to tab it out quickly, it'd be 12, 14 on the G, 15 on the B, and then fingers 1 and 4 to 12 and 17. So that's combining positions 1, the bottom of position 1 and the top of position 2, E minor pentatonic if I was to get technical. Then you could expand all the, you could combine. Woo, there you go. That's a nice little pattern there. So that's some of the.
You're just going 2 1 2 1 2 1 down the strings, but when you're doing 2, you're stretching up to an upper note from the next position up in the scale.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I was just seeing a comment.
So you're skipping that middle note. So.
Yes, you're skipping the middle note. So perhaps I have missed a point here. So let's just to show you where I'm coming from in a bit more detail. Because I've noticed someone in the Zoom chat saying I'm not getting the 2 and the 1-2 system when you skip some notes. Still don't get it, and rightly so because I missed something very important. So if we let's just look at position 1 on the low E string to the D string. Yeah, the 2 note per string. And then if we looked at position 2 E minor pentatonic. My girl. So there we are. We have 15, 17 on the E, and then 14, 17 on the A and the D string. Now, if we, just for a moment, if we combine both of those into one shape, I'm not suggesting everyone plays this, but just to show you how the system works. 12, 15, 17. With an expanded 2, you would take the middle note away. So if I was to take a whole... In fact, that's probably what I do quite a lot in different positions.
Okay, can I make you run some permutations real quick just to experiment with this?
Yes.
So can you do 2 so that you're going to play like the first note and the third note on the low E string, and then for your 1 on the next string, could you pick any one from any?
Yes. So first of all, before we even try to, let's just make the whole position 3 note per string.
Oh,
so that's all 3 notes available within that hand span. Okay, and we can choose. I like to use the middle, so. Here's the thing about the geometry of guitar. Like, obviously, there's melodic choices, but sometimes not all patterns are, safe in terms of, physical injury or like potentially feeling comfortable. But generally, the middle note is always a good one for the 1. So in this case, the middle finger on the 14th fret on the A string, and maybe I would, because of that's a big stretch. Maybe if you're playing guitar sat down with it around, your chin like I am at the moment, that's fine. But when you stood up playing live in front of people, probably just do a contracted like that. So that will just be 12, 15 on the low E, and then a 1, which would be 14. And then D string, probably a good time to get the expanded 1 out, so the 12 to 17 there. So just work on that for now. I encourage people to try this as well, just because this is going to be beneficial. So I know I might sound like a broken record playing over again, but I'll just recap that. So low E string, 12, 15. I'm doing that at fingers 1 and 3. Okay, this also helps a bit. Then the middle finger's going to grab 14 on the A. So almost like an E minor triad. And on the D string, we're going to go 12 up to 17 as a stretch, as a just 2 notes there. Now, I'll talk about technique in a moment, but that's kind of the notes. You could alternate pick that. And the goal, I would say the goal as well is not to necessarily, shred up and down it, but to also use it as a way of, create melodies. My camera's just turned off because it is tired, and I shall turn it back on again, and I'll be back any moment. But I don't know if Luke's... Is that okay, Luke, if I explain that? Okay?
Yeah. So now, the first step was to get this expand position, is to take your first box and start to see how on each string the next position up adds a note to that first box. And then from within that, now we've got 3 notes per string, we can start to pick and choose 2 from one string, any 1 from the other, and 2 from another.
Yes.
And then the point you were just making was, it's not just a shape to be run, it's actually a melodic set of options that we can phrase with and create cool intervallic ideas with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
And now I am playing a guitar tonight with a hardtail. I love playing tellies, but normally I love playing... I haven't got my whammy bar available, but I would often do use these wider shapes and scoop and dupe between them. But that's my thing. Find your own thing. Anybody watching is I'll show you some techniques that you can do with those 2-1-2s. But ultimately, this is to come up with your own licks.
Awesome. I should have made the announcement of what we're here to promote.
Yeah, I was wondering what's going on.
I feel like I should have done that already. So this masterclass, this is the launch event. My bad. This is the launch event for Sam's book, Creative Pentatonic Rock Concepts, which is where that intro backing track and that intro solo comes from. That's all tabbed out in the book. And yeah, we're using this as an opportunity to tell you about some of the concepts that are in the book, which is available from guitarvivo.com and on Amazon, paperback and PDF. Okay, check it out. All these concepts are in there. All these ideas are in there. So I think we've kind of gone through the 2-1-2 stuff as deeply as we should. I think maybe we should have a look at something that's blowing up on YouTube. People are asking about, is that outside stuff that you're doing, that you're especially playing on that track. Do you want to demystify that?
Sure. So, 2 things you should know about me. 1, I'm not like a super jazz person, and Luke has been instrumental in sort of helping me redefine some of the stuff I'm doing. I've always loved listening to sax players like Michael Brecker, who's obviously inspired Frank and Barley, and Holdsworth and people like that, Chick Corea. But Brecker had this cool thing, and Coltrane, and I love Noah, and they've got a sax player called Sam Gendel, and I was transcribing a solo of a Noah solo once, and I heard this amazing run. It was the track was if you know Lewis Cole and Noah, it's very funky and it's E minor 7 or something, and the sax did this, did that, and it blew. But he was doing it on sax, so it just sounded like the smoothest, most amazing. Whoa! What scale? What is going on? Tim and Eric, mind-blowing experience going on. Universes changing, and when I sorry to interrupt, but that literally just happened to me. When before the stream started, you were playing over that backing track, and you virtually did that lick, and I was like, save it for the stream. Okay, this is the lick.
We'll have to go through that one.
I shall teach this lick. It's a bit of a stretchy one, but hopefully, if you as with all of this, take it to what you can. Don't get, and that's the book as well. The book is really giving you the steps through all of this and taking you through the process, but hopefully to at least inspire you if you walk away with something. So all it was a pentatonic scale up a half step, which is the most obvious thing, and I've heard people like Tom Quayle joke about it. You've got all these outside scales, but then you do the half step thing, and everyone thinks you're like a jazz, Instagram jazz fusion player. And when Tom does it, it's just like, whoa, who are we? What's going on? It's incredible when he does it. Absolutely love Tom.
I remember someone referring to it as the instant Scott Henderson switch. Go up a half step and you've turned on your Scott Henderson, and then you can't.
It's great. Most of my, because I play things that I work on things that I use. I know that's kind of obvious, but I did like a disco theatre show the other night, a disco thing, funk thing, and we're playing songs, and it's just like one chord vamps, and you get given a solo, and it's good to have these little easy twists and turns that you can add to stuff, so you're not just stuck with, I don't know, whatever you feel you're stuck with. It's nice to have these things to kind of throw in. So let's break this down. I'll stop talking too much. Okay, so E minor 7 is where the Lewis Cole thing. I think it was the track's on YouTube. It's called "You Can Do What You Want To," and Lewis Cole was playing.
Could we use that backing track that we've been working on for context? Is that?
Oh
E
yeah,
minor?
so that is E minor. Okay, let's bring that on. So here we go. Now, just there is a good example of why this is probably disposable when you first try it, because it doesn't sound. It has to be phrased in context or something. So you have to start with. I don't know. So you got to set it up. You can't just start your solo with the half step up thing, because it's just going to sound like you just made a massive mistake. So, that's a disclaimer. Don't blame me if you get fired from your band. But let me just show that this is actually also, Luke. This is also a continuation of the whole 2-1-3-1 system. So all it was rather than E minor pentatonic, playing an F minor pentatonic over that E minor chord and resolving it back. Now if I go. Let's do that as a lick. That sounds cool because it has a resolution point I think we can all work with. So this is, believe it or not, just F sharp minor pentatonic going up 2 octaves of the scale. Now, first things first is if I was to just play that in position 1. It works, it's nice, but when you put more notes on a string, you get a more legato feel. It's a bit smoother. So here, I'm going to break this down a few strings at a time. So F minor pentatonic. If you eagle-eyed, it's with the root note on the A string on the 8th fret. We're going to go 8, 11, 13. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch for most people, I find. But as I say, if you find that a stretch, let's talk about that. Thumb behind the neck, getting a wrist out a little bit, and of course, I don't know if you can. If just for context, this is where my head is. This is ridiculous. If I went on stage like this, it would be silly. So I wouldn't necessarily play this sort of thing live. But we're just talking about a concept here. So I'm getting around the neck. That's the gist of it. Okay, so 8, 11, 13 on the A string. Then we have 10 on the D string with the middle finger. And I'm on the A string, I'm just doing pick, hammer, hammer. And then I'm picking the D string on the 10th fret. So hopefully people have a kind of rough idea of that. Then over to the G. We have another 3 notes, which is going to be 8, 10, and 13. So this is all coming out of position 4 and position 5 of F minor pentatonic. So, and that's what's known as a 3-1-3. Because guess what? We have 3 notes, 1 note, 3 notes. Now, to be really honest here, I would very rarely. I mean, sometimes I do. I will play that live, but I've got fairly large hands. But you can still get so much out of just the top the top 3 strings with this stuff, you know. So don't. It's a bit easier to get the stretch on the top strings. So once you've done the G, we're gonna have 11 on the B string there. So the 1 is right there, and then over to the top E string, 8, 11, and 13. So I'll just play it real slow up to the top. It just sounds cool just doing it, right? Holdsworth, a lot of Holdsworth's melodic pentatonic phrases use I don't know what I'm doing there. But that's an example of how it could be kind of rolled around and it sounds cool. It just sounds like a sax player to me. Maybe not in my legato hands, but if you take it, make it sound like a sax. And all I did at that for the lick, just descending back down, straight around. So pulling off on that high E. And finishing on E. It sounds weird because we stayed in F minor for so long. So let's just hear an E minor for a moment. Well, let's do it better than that. Oh, I did something. Yeah. I'm on high E string. I'm doing something a bit. Sorry. Whoops. So going to the top note. Then pulling back down. I think that sounds quite cool. It might even be a lick in the book, I don't know. But there's lots of stuff like that. There's so much stuff like that. And there's a lot of examples I've written, like as sort of like creations of what this technique could do, but also there's a lot of improvised examples which I've transcribed and analysed using that as well, so you can hear how these licks happen in a bit more organic situation rather than like here's an Instagram lick of terror 101. Not every lick is like that. It's I do want to sort of stress the sort of melodic aspects of There's a beautiful piece of violin music called The Lark Ascending. I've forgotten who it's by, but it's a beautiful legato major pentatonic melody. It builds. It's a long piece, but the way the violinist phrases, it sounds very 3-note per string in terms of the melodic cells that they move through on the particular recording. Obviously, it's an old piece of music, but yeah. So sorry, Luke. How am I doing?
That's cool. So we talked a little bit about the sidestepping stuff. One of the things that you did really nicely on that track, on the video playthrough, was you kind of segued between positions using sidestepping. So you started in one position, you sidestepped up, and then because, as you said at the start, the minor pentatonic scale is mostly like minor thirds and tones, you could just shift up again and you were back in at the next position.
Yeah.
Could you robotically just play that for us? Like if you play position 1 ascending, play it up a half step and then play position 2, we can see what that is. And then can you break down the lick, if you know the one I'm talking about, near the 5th fret?
Okay, first of all, I think what you're talking about is Is that what you mean? So I started off in E minor pentatonic box 1, bottom 3 strings. Yep. Then I went up a half step, but continued as if I was going up box 1. So that's
there you're like F minor. Yeah.
Then I'm technically F minor, yeah. But I'm not thinking necessarily that. I'm just thinking, help me. Let's land this lick. And then here I'm into position 2, technically, of E minor, which is the exact permutation that we started out with, just an octave higher.
Nice. So I think one of the things that I struggled with when I was first doing sidestepping was I could only go up and then back to where I came from because I was in a shape and my little monkey brain could move that shape up a half step, but then the only thing I could do from there was bring that shape back. What you're doing is you're taking a shape, moving up a half step, and then visualizing where that scale is beyond that fret. So like the next position, and then going to that. So your lines aren't as predictable, but they can have a consistent flow. Whereas my flow would have to be da ba ba, like up and back. Yours can continue to just ascend and ascend and ascend because you know the next position and the next position.
Yeah, but you know the next position, Luke. You're very good at guitar. You're amazing at guitar. But I don't know why Luke's even talking to me about guitar. Like, he's incredible. So, but I know what you mean. When you're starting out with one thing, I think helps is, or two things: destination. So like knowing where you're aiming for, practicing this in a kind of loose way, and some of these are licks, right? These are things that I've practiced, and then they come out in different permutations, and they evolve over time. But the other big part is rhythm, like keeping a strong, or I say rhythm, but a strong motif that moves clearly is very helpful. If it's just random, then it's going to sound random. But if, like for example, it's very nice. This is rock guitar 101, just a nice simple pattern of 6. Now I think you were referring to
No, in the song you play something that starts. That's the one.
Now there's two things going on there.
Okay, did you not go up afterwards? Have I? Okay, so you do come back down.
Well, no, I don't. I stay up. So two things are going on here. Two things that. So referring back to that track that we had at the start, I'll just play the audio for it, just so people can hear it in context. Hold on. One more time, just for context. So I'm landing on an E7 chord there. Now, there's a big clue what's going on here. Two things are happening there. I'm doing sidestepping, and I'm doing superimposition. So, and that's also, to make matters worse with more words, that's also a contracted 2-1-2 pattern. I'm giving you all the lingo here. But here we go.
All explained in the book.
All explained in the book, which you can find there. By the way, I cannot believe I have a book. Even if you don't buy it, I really appreciate you being here. But I hope you do check it out. I didn't expect I'd ever have a book out. So I'm very grateful for Luke for the opportunity. But anyway, back to the guitar. D minor pentatonic. But I'm using D minor pentatonic over a E7 sharp 9 chord. Great, you can play if you're in a cover band like I am and play that funky music, you can use that. Okay, so D minor pentatonic is down a whole step from E7. If we're playing over an E7 groove, most of us are playing. But then we can play D minor over it, and I'll talk about the pattern in a moment. But D minor, some theory is needed here. Basically, you're implying an altered scale of some. I see it as so E7. You can use the altered scale, the 7th mode of the melodic minor. In this case, over E7, it'll be F melodic minor. Whoop. You can tell that I don't really know my scales that well. But also a mode of that, just a way of thinking of this, is the mode behind the 6th mode of F melodic minor is Dorian flat 5. Is that the right word for it? I don't know. But anyway, it's a Dorian scale with a flattened 5th. Okay, because you don't have the 5th. So it's not a sharp 4. It's anyway. So technically, out of that Dorian flat 5, we can sort of force D minor pentatonic. It's not exact because you've got the fifth that acts as a 4. I'm sure there's another technical thing, but it sounds cool. Basically, you're getting flat 7, flat 2, minor third, 11, flat 6 or flat 13, and flat 7. All the nasty notes over E7. Now, again, you know, you would hopefully. What the hell was that, Sam? I got really nervous on that B string. Let's try that again. Okay, so kind of using it again, like sidestepping, E minor pentatonic, then doing a bit in D minor. So E minor, D minor, and then finishing an E minor. That's an example right there. So that's one thing. So pentatonic down a whole step from an E7 chord of some description will give you an altered sound. That's my way of thinking of it. I'm sure if David Beebe or somebody who knew about jazz was here, they'd be going, it's not, because there's a fourth interval in there. But anyway, it sounds cool. And then, just to make it sound a bit more liquid, I'm doing a 2-1-2 sequence in D minor position 4 in these sort of 3-string boxes. So 8, 5, then 8 on a B, 7, 5 on the G, and then I'm taking the 2-1-2s up a half step within. So technically, if I was to do it without sidestepping, it would just be. And then it would be 8 down to 6, 7 on the G, 7, 5 on the D, and then finishing off with that nice sort of minor 7th arpeggio shape. So 7, 5 on the G, 7 on the D, 8, 5 on the A.
So I will just interject quickly. Just a thing to note to everyone like playing along and maybe panicking. If you follow the link that got you here, if you go to guitarvivo.com/watchsam, you'll be able to replay this at least for the next week, so you can go back and redigest this stuff. Don't feel if you're,
Yeah, sorry guys, I am trying my best to do it slowly.
Right.
I also want to do it at a pace that is demonstrative, that you can just dip in and out. I'm not expecting anybody to have this down at all, and I'm sure that people are also getting it down, and maybe people just think that lick sounds rubbish and they don't want to learn it, and that's also cool. But hopefully the concept's underneath.
Yeah, that lick sucks. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm aware of that as well. So yeah. Cool.
Yeah, back to the lick. So
yeah.
Sorry, did you say, are we in, is it position 5 minor pentatonic?
Position 4 D minor. So if we know our positions, it's the one of the weird B string movement. And if you were to be like really, completionist, you've got the lower bit. Sounds cool. All right. So what we're doing is we were doing that 2-1-2 pattern, and then shifting it up a half step on the B string. So that'll be 9-7 on the B string, sorry. 8 frets on the G. Then pulling off from 8 to 6 on the D. It's a bit of a weird one. I had to practice that a bit to get that working, but it feels quite natural. So. Two, 3, 4. And finishing off with. So 8, 6 on the G. 8 on the D. And then 9, 6 on the A. So we're starting out D minor pentatonic, and then we're staying in 2 little 2-1-2 patterns within the half step up, and then it's weird because we've lost context again. So just a neat little thing. Like, I don't. Sometimes I'll remember to do that sort of thing, but that whole solo is fully transcribed in the book. Just as mentioned.
Nice. And if someone asked what it was called, creative. Wait. Okay. Someone asked what the book's called. Sam, what's the book called? Can you remember?
Yeah, I can remember, Luke. It's called Creative Pentatonic Rock Guitar Concepts. Because the thing is, right, we all need another book about pentatonic and rock guitar. But the difference of this one is it's written by me. And and that's all I've got. I don't know. I hope that's a good enough pitch. But
the reason I said that is because I changed the title last minute, so you actually got it wrong there. It's Creative Pentatonic Rock Guitar.
Oh.
No, wait, Creative Pentatonic Rock Concepts. Damn it. Yeah, but anyway, so that was really cool. I think what we're going to have to do now is we've got one question. Oh, see ya. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got one question.
Thank you for tuning in.
On what we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. And then we've got quite a few questions in the YouTube chat and in the Zoom chat that we can go to after. So Mark's asked, any consideration when sidestepping? For example, when to do it? On beat, off beat? Or is it just the resolution that makes it? Where in time does it make it more or less effective? Also, in a chord progression, any degree is better than... So I think maybe just explore when, where you can do this, and if that's not as important as we might think.
Two things. So to start out, I would try working with straight notes, so eighths or sixteenths or triplets or whatever you're going to do. Make the line stick to a certain amount. Obviously, you got to start somewhere and end somewhere, so that's important. Now, to simplify this answer, first of all, because this might be more useful than what I'm about to say, is think like a drummer. Like a drummer does a beat on bars 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're probably playing this similar pattern, and then they might do a fill out of bar 4 into the next section. So you might go like a whatever it is. That's my impression of a drummer. That's why I don't play drums. But so thinking that way, so listen, and if you listen to lots of proper like Scott Henderson and John Scofield, and I don't know, you insert your favourite jazzy rock player, even like the bluesy guys who just do a little bit of it. They always insert it resolving into something, and I chose that chord because this backing track it's kind of. It went to E7, and then it was going to resolve into the solo section, which was A7. So I was using that as an altered 5 to take us out into a different key center. That's a compositional jargon thing. But the drummer thing, Mark's already, I've seen the think like a drummer thing. I think that works for Mark. But I would also, just to add to this, is finding cool sequences and patterns. Like one thing I like doing is if you took like in the book there's lots of this. Take a pattern of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is pentatonic pattern 1, E minor. If that was kind of a rough idea right there. So I was kind of sticking to a rhythmic pattern, which then made it stand out, and there was some space for that outsideness to breathe. But I think the rhythm context it just gives it context. It gives it a framework to hang on to. I think that's what I would suggest, and think like a drummer. Go with that analogy. And if you want to practice this, my friend Carter Arrington, who's an incredible guitarist, some of you might know of him, he would talk about, practicing improvising in bars, sets of 4, and then always sort of using the 4th bar as your kind of, in this practice scenario anyway, as a kind of exit place, and kind of using that as a moment to switch it up and then take it outside, then, land strongly on beat 1 of bar 5, to really create that movement. But that's what I would suggest. And you can practice that. One thing I like to do, and this is from Tom Quayle, really, gesture playing, where you slowly, imagine, just improvise in real time, but slowly, So I like to call that the stepping stone method, because if you're crossing stepping stones in a river, you're looking out for which stepping stone is the best one to get to next, and you jump onto it. And that way you're practicing the mindset of finding these little sidestepping motions in real time. So you're actually sort of working on that muscle. And I think that practice method has helped me tons. And clearly by Tom Quayle's playing, it's devastating. So worth trying the stepping stone or gesture playing method with any new technique.
Awesome. So we'll open this up now. We'll start working through these questions that you guys have sent in. The first one comes from Forrest. When
Forrest.
I asked about what you're curious to learn about the pentatonic scale, he's asked about chords and arpeggios related to the pentatonics, such as minor 7, sus4, add 11s, combining arpeggios with pentatonics. Is that a thing you do? That's kind of the 2-1-2 and all this kind of stuff gives you that sound, right?
Yeah, so I mean there's a great video of Jacob Collier being asked about, can you name all the chords in like the modal pentatonics or something, like if you were to turn each pentatonic into its own thing, and he comedically and sweetly in his very kind of quintessential way answered by just playing the chord. So it sounds like this, and it's that, and that's kind of how I approach it. I do realise some of these end up becoming sus chords. And there's 2 chapters dedicated to chord voicings of the pentatonic in the book. But I'll just hold on a sec. I've just got to reset that camera. You can stack the notes. I'm sure this Forrest, I believe, has asked about stacking these notes. So you might take a 2-1-2. So E minor on the top 3 strings there. You might take the top note of the top position, middle note of the next one, and the first note of the top, and you can actually make these lovely chords with second and major third and minor third intervals kind of popped in there. Now the reason why I said I can't name these things, because you can name them, but they become a bit kind of a mouthful really, is to find where they fit in chord progressions that you like, or something I do a lot is I write melodies and you can kind of harmonise it with the scale pattern. Some of them will sound rubbish, some of them will sound cool. I found these quite useful in solos when I'm like doing something. Just kind of using them as ways of getting these nice bleeds. So that's one thing you can do with the pentatonic. Let's just break that down again. So 12 on the high E, 15 on the B, 16 on the G. And then trying to take that through each position. Like there, if I was to analyse that, I mean, I'm not really thinking of if I thought E minor, you've got the 11, the 5, and the flat 7. So you could think of that as like a add 11 sound or something. But really, it's that. I mean, if I've got a G in the bass, now I've got a G add 9. It depends on the context you bring. But it might just be, I mean, this is the whole point of what I'm talking about here, is that these are things to experiment with and see where they fit in within your system of playing, really. Hope that's answering some of the question. The other side of this is the stacked voicings, and of course I'm not a jazz guitar player, but when I want to pretend to be jazzy, I go on my neck pickup and I stack pentatonic voicings in fourths. just thinking E minor pentatonic here. B minor. Back to E minor. Or whatever it might be. But that's literally just taking, the quick way about this. E minor pentatonic box 1. Just take 3 notes either side of the pattern and stack them. Nothing complex. You could even change which ones you stack. And I write a lot of kind of chordal composition things where those things come in mixed. Of course, all of this mixing with normal triads and things like that, because obviously, you can't just have, a bowl of chips with tons of ketchup on it. You need a bit of salt and pepper and a little bit of ketchup. A bit of everything gives it context. If it's too much of one thing, it can start to sound a bit. Well, I don't know. It might sound good, but that's my feelings around it. That's how I use it anyway. That's just to be honest about that. I don't know if I've answered the question there, Luke, but please, the person is welcome to ask in a bit more detail.
Well, yeah, let me know, Forrest. I know he's still watching. If you
probably switched off after the answer.
Well, I mean, he asked the question an hour ago, but he is still watching. Someone else just asked, will there be video material with the book as per the other stuff? There's a bonus masterclass that Sam did at the summit last year that's included with the book. Is there video of every exercise, or is it's audio of every exercise?
Audio of every exercise.
Ooh, yeah. I hope I've made that clear. Yes, there's audio and guitar pro of every exercise, and there's video of that pentatonic, that final track, and the bonus masterclass. Okay, right. Forrest says yes, thank you. He you hit the mark. Okay, right. Next question.
Good.
I'd like to build more inspiring phrases, not just up and down the pentatonic scale. So that was someone's goal. Someone else has asked on the similar subject of phrasing was... Let me find this. Well, they'd asked, how do you practice phrasing these kind of flashy licks and not have them sound like cookie cutter ideas? Is there any tips for that?
You're asking the wrong person. No, but the one thing I'm aware of that. I think there's a few answers I can give. One is really not fair to us, but it is also the BS question. Is that how much are we trying to play? Is it worth it? Is it really what you like the sound of? And it does take a bit of experimenting with things to work out if you do like the sound of it, and you do have to sort of throw it in to see if it works. And sometimes it might not work in the context that you're trying to put it in. Like some of these phrases I would never get out for certain scenarios, and others, right when Luke said, let's create a track for the book, I thought, great, I'll just throw a bunch of cool flashy licks in, because it's a great exercise piece for everyone to learn and analyse and study. And I used those, and the solo in that was improvised, so those are the licks that kind of came out. So they're obviously patterns that feel good. So the first thing is to find, even though there's all the permutations of patterns that you can play on guitar, to find the ones that feel natural and to really work on them. Something I've really figured out from learning a lot of artists playing is, whilst it's good to get a global view of the fretboard of every string, every position, all that stuff, that stuff is invaluable. You've got to do it. I think it's important, but it's not to confuse that with what you have to play when you go and play, because most players are playing off box 1 and box 4 in either side of that, and using very similar roots. Most people are, and then you can use these. Everyone has their own little things they can throw in that work for them. So that's something to keep in mind. That's all I'm going to say. So work out whether or not what you're trying to throw in is what you want to throw in. And also, are you trying to throw in things just because it's a technical pattern, or is it because it's a cool lick? Now, assuming that's all covered and everything's cool, the next thing to do is first of all, that gesture playing idea I mentioned, stepping stones, like practicing like a slow solo free time, and just slowly putting that lick in with other ideas. So you might, let's say I take that lick from my song just there, right? If I try, maybe I get good at, I can practice that, and I can play that. I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and still manage to mess it up. But like, you can do that. But then obviously when it becomes like, okay, there's a solo, and you. I don't know. It just feels wrong to throw that in like that. That's actually to illustrate my first point, that you want to have the idea free in your hands, and it will come out if it's meant. That sounds very hippie, but it's true. Because as soon as I've just tried to play that in there, it just felt wrong because I was already laying out a nice melody and things. So that's a big question right there for our own tastes and things. And it's not for me to tell you what that should be, but it should be whatever you want. But to go back to the point I was making, you might practice, doing other licks slowly. And then throwing small parts of those bigger licks that you're practicing. Because this is one thing I have a bit of a old man shake my fist at the sky thing about, is you get these lick packages that show these like 4-bar long licks, which are just absolutely terrifying, which are fantastic for technique, fantastic for learning things. And I'm not going to lie, there's some licks like that in the book, but they're not necessarily realistic in terms of what would come out, unless it's like a really amazing jam and it's coming out on the heat of the moment, or it's written into a solo. So breaking those things down into small parts and using the small parts that you like, and then throwing them in gradually into the solos that you're already improvising, that's a really healthy thing to do. Another thing I would suggest, and I've done a lot of, I write music. I've got a band called Masker Judas, and we, progressive metal band, and all the solos in that band are composed. And composing solos is a really healthy thing to do, I think. There's lots of emphasis on improvising and being like the person that can kind of do something off the cuff. But really, if you can create a solo, you learn a lot about what you like and what you don't like, what works, what doesn't work. But you can practice putting those licks in. And because it's your own solo, it starts to become your own habit. It's like your thoughts. If you keep telling yourself you're a giraffe, you're really going to think you're a giraffe. Even though, you really have to we kind of create our reality through our thoughts. So it's the same with licks. You repeat them in a sense that it becomes part of your there when you play, and then it comes out. And eventually it becomes that thing that you hate, that you keep on playing every time you pick up a guitar. I know I've got tons of those licks when you go, it's that thing again. That's kind of where you want to get to. And you get to that by repeating it, using it in different contexts, creating your own solos, using small parts of it in different contexts. That's my answer. Very long and boring answer, but hopefully there's some insight in there. Has everyone left the chat?
Yeah, I've left the chat. Everyone's no, that's great. I'm enjoying the chat. I will just, not a question, but Vic has said, love the way you play guitar.
Thank you so much, Vic. Appreciate you.
Cool. Forrest has asked, this is going back to that 2-1-2 stuff. When we were doing that thing about leaving out notes and, picking the notes, how much thought goes into that? How much thought goes into the intervals you're choosing when you're doing stuff like that?
None whatsoever. Having said that, doesn't mean I'm not aware of what I'm playing over, and maybe the context of okay, I'm not just going to try anything. It's more the melody that I'm following within that framework of pentatonic. That might be a way of thinking of it. However, that doesn't mean I think intervallically on guitar, but within the patterns. Ultimately, but when it comes to this, I could analyze all those. I could say it's a sus4 11 something, and you end up all these huge chord names. But if you're playing pentatonic, it's that sound. It's a block as sound. That's the only way I can really explain it. And if you want to analyze it, I'm not going to stop you. You should do whatever your heart wants you to do. But for me personally, it's not something I go as far as, okay, the chord is E minor, I can use E minor pentatonic, or I might do things like some of the superimpositions. If I want Dorian, I might go up a whole step from E minor to get the upper intervals over E minor, that kind of classic superimposition thing. So F sharp minor pentatonic over E minor. I'll do that kind of thing, and I'm aware that, okay, I'm playing the 9, I'm playing, hold on, here we go, the 11, the 5, the 6, the roots, the 9 again. So as far as that's concerned, I know that, but I'm not thinking about that when I'm just going for those nice little, and especially when it's a fast lick. When I'm playing a fast lick, I'm just trying to impress people, so not thinking about any intervals.
Nice. I don't know if you'll agree with this, but this is what I kind of assume is happening when you're doing that kind of stuff. There's an element of, so if I'm understanding Forrest's question as well, Forrest's question is like, how much thought and care goes into picking what I play in the moment. I think that's not what he's asked. That's not what he's asked. But that's what I think is the subtext of when I'm playing. How am I making these choices? And what I think, maybe you'll agree with me, the answer is it's kind of this element of survival of the fittest from your practice. You practice, you explore, you do all these permutations, and over time what happens is you start to continue to develop and hold on to the ones that are sonically pleasing and physically pleasing, and you let go of these things that aren't so great, so that in the moment you're not making a choice of, oh, I want the 5th, the 6th, and this and that. You're going, what am I going to play from my pool of things? And your pool of things is things that you have refined and collected based on the fact that they're going to work.
Oh, 100%. And also, like, for me, the more I think about it in the moment, the more stifled I get. And that's this big thing, being on camera and playing. Jake Wilson came to see me with the Jeff Beck tribute thing, and he said, I'm a much better player in real life than I am on camera. And I agreed with him because there's just no pressure. There's no, and I thought it was a very nice critique, actually. It was very helpful.
Well, it's convenient. There's also no record of it afterwards. So we're just taking your word for it.
Well, he did say it. You can ask him. And he's a very real person. He was very lovely about it. But to go back to, it reminds me of that whole situation. You're going to meet somebody. Let's say you're going to meet, I don't know, a potential romantic interest or a famous person that you admire a lot, and in your head you're like, I'm gonna say this, and they're gonna think, hey, how you? And you start practicing all this stuff, and then if I tell them this, and then you get there and you just go, oh, I love you, and then it just whatever comes out, it's a survival. That's why we practice. That is the analogy. You just want to make sure that you've got enough grounding, enough technique and stuff, and it's relevant to what you're doing. And that's all down to prep. Gigs aren't just happening. Players aren't turning up to gigs not having any idea what they're really doing. Most of the time, they know what they're going to be soloing over. They know the songs, hopefully, if they're professional. So there's a bit of prep that you get in that context. And then when you get to the gig, it goes with the wind, hopefully. And if you're listening and receptive and not stuck in your own thoughts, you're probably going to play well.
Dude, that analogy has really hit home for me because, after that situation where you talk to someone and then you walk away going, why did I say that? Like the amount of times I've got off the stage at a jam night and been like, why did I play that stupid like,
but this
the
is
same feeling.
Going back to the earlier question about putting fast licks in playing and things, this is what I'm saying. Like you are what you eat and what you practice, and what we are a result. Globally of what we pay attention to ultimately. So our thoughts, our feelings, what we decide to buy, what we decide to play, blah blah blah, is all based upon what we pay attention to. So if we're practicing something which is completely crazy, really like some mental 8-finger tapping thing, and then suddenly in the moment, because that's what happens if you're thinking too much in a moment of playing a solo, improvising, when things are going south, you go to the thing that you think, I was working on this, and then it just goes, so don't prepare. It's very Zen, the whole Zen thing of just don't think, just act, fully, and the rest. But then that requires discipline of practice. So, and honesty.
Well, on the subject of practice and on the subject of Jake Wilson, if anyone's interested, I'm doing a live stream with Jake for JTC on Wednesday, their first ever YouTube live stream, and you can sign up for that guitarvivo.com/Jake, where we'll be talking about practice. Chris on YouTube has asked, will this remain on YouTube? Yes, this one will stay up. We'll definitely keep it up for a week at least, and then we'll keep it up at the link. Whatever link brought you here, you can use that link to find this. And if you're on YouTube, you can save this link. Right, I think there's one last question that I wanted to hit. Again, from our chief questionnaire, Forrest. How valuable has learning other people's material been in developing your own sound? Whether it's for Lick Library or function gigs?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's the work ultimately, really, because I don't really practice as much as I should do. But I don't remember anything I've taught for Lick Library. In fact, if I do like a one-off gig for somebody, I'll forget the set the day after. You know, I'm kind of like dump. But then there's things that remain. It's like you're throwing spaghetti at the wall and some of the bits of spaghetti stick. It's kind of that's what I'm left with. And the more spaghetti you throw at the wall, the more spaghetti is going to get stuck. So I don't know. These analogies keep. I should have wrote that one in the book. Damn. But the idea of we learn. I mean, this is the Victor Wooten thing. Music is a conversation. It's an open statement happening in time. It sounds very pretentious, but like it is a communication, and it's people expressing themselves. And when we're kids, you don't learn language. It's amazing watching children learn speaking because they're picking up the sounds that the adults are making. They're not articulate. They're learning to articulate. They're finding out what that sound is relationship for. What happens when you make that? I mean, I'm analysing it. I don't know how it works. Nobody knows why we're talking and why we're even conscious, but we're here. But it's happening. And music is the same thing. You learn it in the same way. And I think it gives you context. It gives you context for what you like, what you don't like. And also it's very difficult to play other people's music because they're often playing what comes naturally to them. And that's a reminder to ourselves to find the things that come naturally to us. Because when we see Guthrie Govan, when we see Jake Wilson, when we see, I mean certainly like virtuoso players here, but anybody who's a master of their craft, they're not, so like Martin Miller was saying to Luke earlier, they're not searching for the things that they're weak at and playing that. They're going for the things which make most sense. They're going to the next available thing in their mind that's natural. So that's what learning others' music does. It gives you a whole context of tone, articulation, time, feel. You get the licks and the riffs, which are cool, but there's so much more beyond it. And this is why learning it by ear is so important, because it kind of gives you you're learning that vocabulary of note choice and feel. If you love it, the more you love it, the more you're going to get out of it. Hence why some of the cover band stuff doesn't stick, because it's just you're just doing it. But and that's to anybody here who does that sort of work probably feels the same. But when you get asked to learn something that you love, or and Lick Library have been very lucky. They've thrown some really cool albums at me. Albums I should have learnt when I was 17. But here I'm at 34, 35, learning them now and enjoying it because I've spent so much time learning theory and things in the past and gigging and whatnot. I can come at it from a different perspective than somebody coming at it for the first time. But if you know your theory, you know your harmony on the neck, then learning music is a beautiful thing. You really see how it goes into context. So very important. You can't exist in a vacuum. Nobody exists by themselves. You need oxygen to live, and you need that. You need an atmosphere. You need the world. You need the sun. So in the same way as a musician, you need music. So
awesome. Right, I think that brings us to a nice close. We had a quick question. Well, we had a question in the chat and it got answered. The question was, what is the best pentatonic position to get the ladies? And it's been voted on in the chat that it is position 3. So I don't know the science or the research that's gone into that. I can't vouch for it. So far, I'm giving up on all of them. I don't think it's any of them.
Guitar does not help with that sort of thing.
I think it's drums. I think the correct answer is drums.
Drums and playing cool music as well. Playing music, it's
or singing.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It's so wonderful to see so many familiar faces as well. Dane and Pete, great to see you guys. They were at the Andy Wood event.
Oh, cool.
So what do we have anything else to mention? Anything coming up for you, Sam? Anything we should be looking out for? Albums?
Not at the moment. I've just come off tour of Koshin in Australia. I'm taking a break off of that. So I'm teaching still. I'm doing lots of Lick Library stuff. I'm doing a big 19th of November at the Gaiety Portsmouth. I'm doing a 30-piece orchestra of a rock band Queen thing, which is really cool. 19th. And apart from that, I'm always working on music, playing things. There are things in the works. I just can't recall them all now. But one thing I would say is I really appreciate doing this, Luke. I appreciate everyone tuning in, and I hope it's been helpful. And I'm reachable on most platforms like Instagram and YouTube, so don't be afraid just to hit me up if you have any questions regarding this or the book. I'll be happy to help. Thank you.
And just going off what you said earlier, because someone kind of picked up on it, you said you don't know why you're here and why I'm talking to you and stuff. I like to think in the least arrogant way I can say this. Like I only ask people who I want to write books. I gatekeep it, and there's a quality control. So I'd like to think that in asking you, you've realized that it is because we love your playing and you have a lot to contribute. And I'm sure everyone will agree we've learned a lot in this last 90 minutes. And I'm very grateful for you being so open with this information and not yourself gatekeeping, keeping it to yourself. So, just on behalf of everyone,
thank you.
Thank you for doing this. On behalf of myself and Sam, thank you for tuning in. You guys help make this possible with your support and, asking questions. But yeah, guys, if you can, Tuesday, I'm with Jake Wilson, guitarvivo.com/Jake if you want to sign up for that one. And this will be on replay. You can watch this wherever you've watched it now on YouTube and guitarvivo.com/watchsam. And yeah, we hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. Take care, guys.